West Queen West is a portion of Queen Street West that extends from Bathurst to Dufferin. In 2014, this was the part of Queen Street that earned the title of the second most hip street in the world. That's because this area is known for quaint and unique shops, beautiful Victorian architecture, designer hotels, tasty international bakeries, and local artisan coffee shops. Not to overlook the white squirrel obsession and some fascinating history. This building right on the corner of Bathurst and Queen was built by E.J. Lennox, the builder of Toronto, perhaps one of his very first projects as a young architect. This building began as a Masonic club and has had many occupants, but one of the most iconic uses was a huge dance club called the Big Bop. The building was painted the horrible purple color, and as you can see, it has now been beautifully restored and is a furniture store. If you remember the Hug Me tree, this is the same artist, Elixir. A lot of businesses place that in their windows to show that this area is very friendly to the LGBTQ community. So John Fluvog and his partner started the store in Vancouver, and they began it by selling 19th century shoes as new. They went to Mexico and found a huge load of shoes that were almost 100 years old, and so they bought them all and decided to sell them. They have very, very unique styles. Now they sell all over the world and often bought by celebrities. A pair of shoes cost from $200 and up. Now, what is really interesting is a room in the store which I call the anti-gravity room. And I will show you pictures of me basically walking on the wall, because in that room there is no gravity. And this is a little secret of the street. If you ever get a chance, come visit this room. It's really fantastic, and actually people are quite friendly. They don't mind you going there to take photos. And this one is an old church that now has an anthropology store. People are waiting to get into the Australian boot company. Looks like it's Bluntstones. There's the street. But people around here are kind of obsessed with squirrels, especially white squirrels that have been known to come around Trinity, Bellwood's park. People are standing around waiting in line for that cafe and Taroni's. '23 Cafe, vegan cupcake place. Loaded pierogi. I've never been there, but it looks good. And pierogi is something, well, we eat it at home because we have a kind of a Russian background. But in this area, there used to be a predominant Ukrainian, especially Polish population. Huge Ukrainian church, and it's quite beautiful inside. I've only seen pictures. No idea how to get in there. And then there's a roasted nut coffee shop. Looks quite interesting.
Like cookies and like all these like goodies versus like...
There's a huge lineup for Nadej as well. This etched map shows a creek that was here. Garrison Creek that was here for many, many years until in the 1880s it started to be covered up by developments. That's the story of that sign that says here. And it was a creek that's been used by Iroquois for thousands of years by indigenous people. So this is the map of where it would have been over the streets and neighborhoods, and around is the word water in different languages. They're seen in Russian. So here it says Trinity Bellwood, and behind the washroom there it says Garrison Creek. Now this is Trinity Bellwood's park. Right now there's a lot of homeless people that have set up their tents here. Tents have been provided by the city, well, to help prevent them catching COVID. This area is particularly vulnerable to the homeless. There have been a number of institutions here built on Queen West, including a prison and the Lunatic Asylum that I will show you later, and how it had an impact on the society and in the community. A lot of people that were released from prisons, or when prisons were demolished and the Lunatic Asylum was demolished, they had no place to go, and a lot of them ended up in rooming houses or homeless. And those that ended up in rooming houses eventually even lost that, as there was such a huge turnover in the properties here. And the White Squirrel Cafe, another ode to the white squirrels often found in the Trinity Bellwoods Park. What you see here are the only things that are left from the Trinity College that was here for a long time, about 100 years. But it was demolished over 50 years ago, I believe. Yeah, University of Trinity College was located on this site from 1852 to 1925 in a large Gothic revival building designed by Kiva Stooley with later additions by Frank Darling. Trinity was founded as an Anglican college by Bishop John Strand. And as I said before, John Strand was a huge leader in the community at the time, in 1850s, 1830s. West Queen West started off as a factory street due to the proximity of railroads in the area. All these railroads are now gone. After the factories moved north, this area became a commercial street with warehouses and varieties of businesses. It was cheap, but also a little on the seedy side. There were some sex workers here, a lot of rooming houses. Still, this was a place where people could find affordable housing, and artists could find a cheap place for them to work and display their work. And as the galleries made the street more popular and more in demand, higher income people began to move into the area, pushing out those same artists as rents and expensive condos went up. This brown building was a chocolate factory that created Patterson chocolates. The building next to it was a candy factory, but before that it began in 1920s as a knitting factory that spun wool into yarn. Then in 1969 the building was bought by Say Candy Company from New Jersey. They had repurposed the machines used in the war to make Little Rockets candy, those little round rockets that still exist today and are very popular. Then later they moved to Scarborough. These two factories were a major job provider to the Portuguese community living in this area. Eventually, condominium companies took over and created condo lofts starting at around $150,000 in the beginning. Okay, now on this side is the only remnant that you will find of the Lunatic Asylum, is this wall. The inmates built it in around 1850s. They were basically prisoners, treated as slaves, who lived in the giant Lunatic Asylum that was in this site. The Lunatic Asylum was humongous, and you will see the other wall that was on the other side of the asylum. Another tribute to the squirrels found, the albino squirrels found in the Trinity Bellwoods Park once in a while. So one time they found a dead one hanging off the power lines. Quite traumatizing, and they took a photo of it. They were worried that that was the only one, and now it met its unfortunate end, but luckily later they spotted more, so they're still around. There's some inscriptions here, but I don't see any inscriptions from before 19th century. I don't even know how authentic these ones are. There's quite an interesting bench there. There was a superintendent's house, and later there were nurses who lived here, and a lot of women inmates worked as unpaid servants in this building. Many people worked as unpaid servants here in this building. It was built in 1850 and became the largest asylum in Canada. And even then it still became very overcrowded. Many people came from prisons, and some were inmates that before would have been kept at home. By 1950s, they decided that they wanted to start changing the way that they dealt with mentally ill, and many thought that they don't need to be living inside a house the whole time. So they started transitioning many to be able to live outside. But when they finally demolished this place, I think it was late 1960s or early 70s, many ended up homeless. And I've heard stories that some actually just sat on the subway, on the streetcar, and rode it back and forth because they didn't know what else to do. So even though it's more humane not to keep people in prison, for some people this was a home and a place where they could get 3 meals a day. And later they were not able to provide for themselves. Many were settled in rooming houses, like I said. A lot of old Victorian homes were converted into rooming houses. But with huge gentrification and property rates rising, those were being bought out by people who wanted to turn these places into condos or, expensive homes. You're walking towards the white squirrel. There was a poster here that I found on a tree that said it had a face of a realtor, and underneath his face it said the man who sold Parkdale, because he would go around and offer owners of the rooming houses lots of money, and then they would sell, and all those people would be turned out and then would have no place to go. The white squirrel. They built a statue to the elusive white squirrel, the albino squirrel that should have pink eyes. Oh, quite interesting. Nothing says gentrification like Starbucks. And down there is an alley where you will find a lot of beautiful graffiti. On this side it says Fenning Street, Art and Design District. And on this side it's White Squirrel Way. Again, the obsession with the white squirrels here. And then here is the other side of the giant wall. Right here. I don't know if you've noticed how far I walked, but pretty far, indicating how much Queen Street has changed. Agricultural work was significant here from 1850s until 1880s. Male patients did most of this free labor just outside of these walls. And often when the patients tried to escape, they said that that is a sign of your mental instability if you tried to escape. They also said that it was very good for them to work. I can't get over how gigantic that place was. I don't think there's any such large place in Toronto now. Changing face of Queen Street. Okay, so this building here is the Great Hall, and this is the entrance. Built in 1890 as a YMCA. It was one of the first places where basketball was played. As you know, basketball was invented in Canada. And Tom Longbottom, the indigenous winner of the Boston Marathon, trained here many years ago. For a long while, it was also managed by the Polish Union. There's a very nice bar here. Bar Poet. So I had to cross the street to show off this gorgeous Great Hall building.
Right, but it has no. But she.
All condos here. Now, where you see this building, about 20 years ago, there was a different building, a leftover structure from the John Abel factory. They made machines, and they provided machines even to Gooderham and Ward, and that was the distillery district. And a stone with sayings on it. The Drake Motel was a flop house. It was called the Stardust Hotel, and it rented rooms by the hour. And in 2000, a man named Jeff Stober revitalized it, renovated it, and that was the beginning of the gentrification of the area. And now it became a weekend destination. Mabel and Town Barber Major Treat. Death and Taxes. Heated patio. This is a furniture store. Look, it says, "Let wild kindness be." Inuit. They have a heated patio also. So this is the Gladstone Hotel, built, I believe, in 1889. There was a railroad just nearby here, and many people came here on the railroad, made a stop here, would stay at the Gladstone Hotel, and attend the CNE, Canadian National Exhibition, which is down Dufferin Street. The hotel was opened by a lady with 13 kids, and the last ownership here was also a female-run hotel. It was a flop house. A couple of entrepreneurs bought it and renovated it. At the time, in 2000, people who came off the street, often with no IDs and nothing, and they would stay here for years. The new owner, when she renovated the place, tried to find suitable accommodations and make sure that they would be okay for each of her tenants. There's a documentary about that, The Last Call at the Gladstone Hotel. Now, it says subway, but actually it wasn't subway, it was obviously just this underpass. The last place I wanted to show is the Reclamation Wall that is here. A lot of graffiti. Well, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, then thank you so much for watching. On the way back to my car, I decided to stop by a couple of bakeries and try some of those nice looking baked goods and some local coffee. I hope you have a wonderful day. See you next time. Bye bye.